Hi, everyone. I'm going to record a strange little podcast today. And I say strange in that I normally don't do deep dive demos or trainings. But a friend of mine asked me as a favor if I would explain the bullet journal and share a couple of resources. So, first and foremost, I highly encourage you if you're looking for a way to keep your brain organized, keep your life in line. Um, I highly encourage you to check out the bullet journal method. And if you want to know if the bullet journal is for you, I will share a link called How to Bullet Journal. And this has been a game changer for me. And going from memory, the creator of the bullet journal, his name is Ryder Carroll, or yes, Ryder Carroll. And Ryder is the creator of the bullet journal. And Ryder came up with a way of organizing his brain, organizing his work. I'm going from memory. It's been a while, so forgive me, but I believe he was in a creative world. I can't remember. I want to say website design, but I might be wrong. But basically, he had ADHD and he struggled with a lot of learning issues through his younger days, and quite by accident he developed a way of managing his many thoughts and managing his projects all in one tool. And I'm going to share a couple of supplemental resources that I used. But what really made this come home for me and made it solidify was pairing it with a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen and Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. And those three books combine to create something really powerful. And I'm not going to teach you the basics of bullet journal. I'm going to show you what I did with my bullet journal. And I'm going to show you a couple of things. But what I'm about to show you is not a substitute for reading this book. I reread this book at least every couple of months, and I can't tell you how valuable it is. It reminds me of things, it refreshes things. But the key is it also helps me figure out how to customize the bullet journal. And I'm going to show you how I turn the bullet journal, my version, into a digital tool so that I can keep track of everything in my life. And what I like about the bullet journal is I'm an ideas person. There's nothing I hate more than erasing a full whiteboard without having it properly tracked. I love to write that down in my bullet journal. Sometimes I'll take a picture of it and I'll put the highlights in the bullet journal. But what I do is the bullet journal is my first filter in life. So it goes with me everywhere. I'm not kidding. I have a little satchel that I can carry pens and a journal. And what I actually did, I created my own bullet journal template and I sized it on Amazon specifically for me so that it fits perfectly inside my satchel. So if I'm not at my desk, the bullet journal is always in its satchel and it goes everywhere with me, whether I'm going to a movie with my family, going to the symphony, going for a walk, driving. I never know when an idea is going to hit me. I keep it near me when I sleep. So I wake up in the night and I just make notes and then I go back to bed. So I'm going to share what I did to make the bullet journal my own. And I just, again, wanted to say that reading this book has been huge, and I can't recommend this book enough. It's funny, it's a life lesson, but it's also helped me so much in sales, in business, and marketing. This is the tool that keeps me sane. Now, there is obviously, I recommend you read the book, but if you're like me, you're super impatient and you just want to jump in. There are a lot of videos on the Bullet Journal website. I highly recommend you subscribe. I love the basic videos. So this one here is how to bullet journal. I'll put the link in the show notes. And basically, it's a very short 4-minute walkthrough of all of the elements of a bullet journal. But the thing I love most, it's not the fact that Ryder shares ideas and this is how to bullet journal. What I love is there's this amazing, amazing community. And so, for example, this wonderful person has shared why bullet journaling as a planner for people with ADHD. This one has a how to set it up and how to get started, how to be ready for the whole year. There's a lot of amazing things. But basically, it's just people sharing their ideas on how they've adapted the bullet journal to themselves. So, the bullet journal method is a framework for journaling. It works for personal life, it works for work life, it works for bringing both worlds together. And what I love is I've eliminated the need for post-it notes because all first things that enter my brain start in my journal. So they have a place. I'm going to show you that in a second. They have a place. And then when it becomes a full-fledged idea, then it's a launch pad for me to get started. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what I created. And this is thanks to Ryder Carroll, thanks to the bullet journal community. I created my very own bullet journal that makes sense for me. And if there's enough interest, I will happily create a tutorial on how I did it. But for today, I just want to show you what I've done. And for the record, they're recommended if you go to your favorite stationery store, journal store, paper store, there are recommended journals. You can buy them online specifically for bullet journaling. And I'm just going to share that I have OCD. And so I created this specific journal to help me with my OCD. And the biggest thing for me was I'd spend hours agonizing over the layout and the format. And I dreaded the transition from I filled the journal, now I have to start a new one because I would spend hours and hours and hours recreating the format. And one day I had this aha moment that I love Amazon, I love their KDP publishing platform. So what I did was I created my very own bullet journal template. And now what I do, really simple, one of my big pains was the transition. Most journals out there in the world have 200 pages. The first thing I did, you'll see, is my journal has 400 pages. Now, the other thing, there's a bunch of elements that are optional. I'm going to show you what I included. And again, none of this is to take away from the community. None of this is to take away from any copyright. This is just how I applied what I believe to be community driven learning, and I've taken it. And so this particular book is not for sale. I'm not trying to sell this book. I'm showing you how I created my own template so that whenever it was time to transition, all I have to do is go to Amazon, order it, and this beautiful personalized journal comes to me within a couple of days. So one of the things that I think is huge is the index. Now, before we get to the index, I'm going to share my thoughts on the key. And this is where I think the community is amazing, and where Ryder's book is really amazing. It gives you some symbols that you're going to use a lot. So, for example, you might have a symbol for to read something later, or to review something, or to write something, or to watch something, or to train someone. Create the symbols that you use the most. And I'm just updating the key based on different symbols that I like to use. Again, I have OCD, so I like to use the same symbols for the same things. But basically, what I do is I create my own description. And then throughout the book, as I make notes, I use these symbols in context. And I'll show you the context as we go through this. Now, the other thing that's really, really important is I have a table of contents so that it's really easy for me to find all of these sections. And one of the things I found least like likable for me, a lot of the bullet journals that are recommended, or you can set up a blank one, you they don't necessarily have page numbers or the page numbers were arbitrary. They didn't quite fit where I wanted things to go. So what I did was I created my own page numbering. And what I like about this is that in every future edition, I will have the same things on the same pages. So over time, I plan on using this for the rest of my days. Over time, I'm going to remember, oh, I want to look at future logs, page 34. So I'm going to show you just one little thing. Collections, we're going to talk about what a collection is, but you'll see I left a little blank line here. So what I'll do is if I have a specific collection, I'll write what it is here. So I have collections 1 through 12, and I can then create a custom name, and I know just to flip to that page. I can have more than 12 collections, but one of my collections, if I had say 15, one of my collections might be collections part 2, and I'd put it here. I'll explain that when we get there. But basically, I'm going to show you the big main parts of what I do. This is a message, a video. Sorry, this is an image that I found online. Somebody sort of summarized what the bullet journal means to them. I've put it in just as a reminder. And as you can see here, there's a little index. So this is not meant to be, my take on things. This one page here is just something I found online, and I love the simplicity where they explained all the key pieces. So at the heart of the bullet journal, we journal, we document, we take notes. I'll go into that in a bit. But the index is the root, the source. This is the thing that makes the journal amazing and fantastic. What I'll do way down at the bottom here, under daily logs, I will document something of importance to me. Maybe it's an idea, maybe it's a process, maybe it's a project. And what I'll do is on a specific page, which I will show you, I will have a heading and I'll talk about that thing. And what I do here is I put that new project or new idea in the description and I write the page number. So later on, I can scan through and I can look and I can go straight to those notes. I love doing this with client projects because if it's a one-off meeting, I'll put the client in here and then I just have to scan down to see it. Or if it's an ongoing project, I'll create a collection and then I can link to it all. But the index was the part that I hated the most because it was never long enough, never enough pages. A lot of the great templated books have indexes, but not enough. So I put enough pages for me to cover, 400 pages. Now, the mental inventory, this was something I really, really liked. And for me, I wanted it to be in the same place all the time. So what I do, I have all 12 months and my journals, I always start the beginning of the year with a new journal. And what I do is this is just me writing out, it's kind of a brain dump, but in a format. Here's some projects I'm working on right now. I can assess with the 80-20 principle, are they projects I should finish or are they projects I should just wrap up or drop? Then what I should be working on, these are my most important projects that move me forward the fastest in life. So 80-20 principle, 20% of your effort gives you 80% of your results. These are the low result column. This is the high result. And then these are my dream things, my wish list. If I had more time, I would blank. And basically what I do is at the end of every month or beginning of every month, I list out what I got in my head. And this just allows me a one pager to think about which projects should move forward, which projects should stop. So I teach a concept called eliminate, automate, delegate. This is where I'm making those big decisions. And just because I like to be complete, I put all 12 months in one place. And this is the kind of stuff that I waste time on. So I just created templates. Now, the future log, this is kind of a dumping ground for projects that haven't started. And I know there's a rough timeline. For example, oh, that's a July project. I don't have a start date yet, but basically, I need to look at each of these months. And so at some point, I'm going to migrate an idea from a future log into either a monthly log or a daily log or a collection. So think of this as your scratch pad. January, I have a few birthdays I need to remember. February, there's deadlines that are important to my business. So basically, I just write the idea down. I don't have a deadline for it yet. I don't have a timeline. I don't have the next steps. I just know that I need to look at that in that month. And so every month I review this and I either carry something forward to the next month or I move it to a different month or I make a point of adding it to my workflow and getting it done. So I really like the future log because this is the 2 a.m. Oh, don't forget to do whatever thing. This is where I put it. And that allows me to go back to sleep because I'm not trying to remember things. Now, once you have the future log, the monthly log is where you actually start to schedule things. So let's say, for example, my birthday is January 11th. Maybe I'm planning on taking that day off. I will put the day of the week there. I will put my notes, and then if there's more to do from that, I'll have a reference to a page. So, for example, if I was planning a birthday party for my friend Jeff on his birthday, January 11th, I'd probably have a project page where I talk about the birthday party and I would just put the page number here. So the monthly log is when I'm starting to get clearer. I know when the thing has to start. Maybe I haven't figured out all the pieces, but I put it in here as soon as I know a date. That way I can scroll through, I can look at it. And what I do is every week I look at the log and I determine is something relevant. If yes, I make sure I know when it's moving ahead. What's my next step? If it's not relevant to me anymore, I use a red X just so I know I don't have to do anything further with that piece of information. So that is the monthly log. And again, I like to know they're all on the same pages. Um, you don't have to copy this forward. I know some diehard people who fill 2 or 3 books a year journals. They'll recopy all of this. That moment, every time you fill one journal and you're about to start the next, that's your moment of you've got a clean slate. You can wipe the whiteboard clean and you decide, and this is the most powerful thing, you decide what's important enough to carry forward. So if you need it, it's always where you left it. But if it's important, you can always carry it forward. So I like the idea there's a conscious choice. And this really helps me with my OCD because once I've scheduled something, I don't obsess over it and I'm not compulsively trying to get it done because my default is I will get something done rather than try to remember that I have to do it. So that means it's hard for me to shut down. It means workaholic tendencies. Whereas if I have a tool like my bullet journal, I can shut it off and say, okay, I'll come back to you next week. Now, collection, this was the one, for whatever reason, my brain didn't quite embrace it quickly. It didn't wrap around it right away. The thing I would say is for the index, if you have a lot of one-off things, like say you do a networking event and you meet a new person, and that's probably a one-off, then you just put them in your daily log, you put it in the index, and you're fine. But if you network a lot, like I do, you might create a collection. And what this does is, let's say the connection is networking, you can link to the pages of people you've met through different networking events. So it just allows you, think of this as, recurring, repeat stuff. Maybe you have an ongoing client and you do a monthly project for them, you'd have a collection for that client. And what this does is it allows me to consolidate. So, for example, I have one specific networking group where I meet every week. I keep all my notes from that specific group in a collection so that I can filter back and see what meetings, who attended, what notes I have. And again, this is my raw notes. So what I do is if something's important enough, I transfer it over to a digital storage. And what I have is a spreadsheet where I keep track of the page numbers. And what I do is I number each of my journals. So, for example, the first journal of 2023, I might call it 2023 01, 2023 02 would be my second, or maybe like 2023A, 2023B. Some people do it by month. I don't care how you do it. How I do it is numbered. So I have 2023 01, 2023 02. And then what I do is in my spreadsheet, I'll put the main things that are really important to me and I know I'm going to need to find. I put them in my spreadsheet so I can just find, I use Control F and I look in the spreadsheet and I can find the topics. But what this does is it allows me to keep sort of an ongoing journal. And whenever it's done, I can put it on a shelf and my spreadsheet tells me when to pull it out. So collections are really good if you're doing a big project and you want to track multiple things. Now, the other thing I'll share is from my bipolar, I do struggle with depression and anxiety. So I've created a gratitude and a goal collection, one of each. The gratitude helps me stay focused, centered. It helps me appreciate the victories I've had, helps me stay positive, whereas the goals help me as a North Star. If something's not important to me accomplishing a goal, it doesn't make it into my workflow. Now, the Calendex is, I'm just going to cover it very quickly. I like to see at a glance, if there's an important date, or let's say I'm blocking off vacations. I do this at the beginning of the year. So to me, the Calendex is really useful. It allows me to just see at a glance important things. So, I can block off a couple weeks in July and I know not to schedule anything in that time. Now, I'm going to spend the least amount of time on the most important thing, and this is the daily log. So really, really simple. I put the date here, and then I will put my notes in bullet point form. And as I told you at the very beginning, I have my little key, my legend of things. Let me just show you. So instead of using, a dash or something, I use symbols. And those symbols tell me to, maybe follow up, maybe schedule, maybe figure out next step. But basically, what I do is at the end of every day, I go down my list and I decide which things are my most important. And they end up in my workflow, which is an automated digital tool for keeping notes. So all of my details, all of my projects, everything, the detail goes into my computerized system. But this is my free form. This is always with me, and this is where I make my notes. And like I said, at the end of the day, I look at everything and I give it a symbol based on what the next action item is or what should be the next action item. And if something's no longer important, I exit out. So from here, an idea either goes into my active workflow or it might go into um, a future or monthly log. If, let's say I'm having a workshop on September 30th, I would put that in my monthly log on September 30th and I would start to plan it. So I'd probably create a collection for it. But that's a high level and basically just repeat every day. And you can put as many days on a page as you need to, or as few. um, I like the idea. I use one page per date. That helps me sort of see, I'll show what my meetings were, I'll show what my highlights of the day were. But basically, this keeps it really simple for me. And like I said, at the end of every day, I'm reviewing my notes and I'm planning and saying, okay, tomorrow I'd like to focus on this, or here's what I'm working on. So I want to thank Ryder Carroll for giving me the inspiration. And really, truly, all I did was I took his training, his lessons, and I adapted it to my specific needs. And I created my own bullet journal template. I strongly encourage you to figure out what you need, what works for you. Um, if you're just starting out with a bullet journal, my advice is start watching a couple of videos, start with a blank, the very, very basic journal. And as you have time, you can then start to refine it. But what I love about this is the journal I have, the physical paper one, captures all of my ideas and then leads into my workflow, which is where I focus on execution. So I go from high level ideas in my journal, it's the kind of thing you're sitting under a tree watching a sunrise. You make notes in it, and then my actual workflow system is where I actually turn those ideas into action. So I hope this was useful for you. I know it's a little bit of a departure from normal. The final thing I want to share, if you love the bullet journal, one of my other favorites is the 100-day goal journal. And basically, I have a version of both. The goal journal is hyper focused. So my bullet journal is where all my stuff goes. Whereas if I have one goal that I'm going to focus on for 100 days, I use this journal just to track that one goal. Now, that's a big, audacious goal, and it's going to have different segments and different milestones. But this is my default. And again, it's a paper journal because it fits in my satchel and it comes with me everywhere I go. And this is where I specifically put my materials, resources, to dos, follow ups, everything related to my big business goal. I'll fill out two, maximum three of these a year. I take a little downtime between to decompress. But think of this as the ultimate collection. I showed you this back in my bullet journal. I might have, smaller collections, but if something's important enough to me, everything goes in the journal from day 1 to day 100. So those are my journaling guides, and you can put personal things in there. You can share mental health. You can share resources. You can use nutrition trackers. The cool thing about the bullet journal itself is that there is this vibrant community. I mentioned that already. If you just search for bullet journal template or how do I bullet journal, and then insert whatever you're trying to accomplish, whether it's planning a wedding or planning a funeral or planning a graduation party or launching a new business. Somebody out there has created some really cool templates and tools. There's an artistic element to the community and a very practical element. So highly recommend you start to check out the bullet journal community. Believe it or not, I have a collection of bullet journal resources. So whenever I want to improve my bullet journal game, I can go watch certain videos, but I keep notes of them in my journal so that they're there. So I hope this was useful, and I'd love to hear how you are using the bullet journal yourself. Thank you.